Hey sports fans, it's time for NUTV Sports.
What makes this year Northeastern's year?
Welcome to Sportseastern. I'm Tom.
And I'm Mike, and this week we're talking about the Beanpot, men's and women's. Stay tuned.
But before we do that, we're going to give a look at the weekend that was in Northeastern sports. And we're going to start that on the courts, with Northeastern's men's basketball team having a doubleheader this weekend, the first game of which they kicked off the weekend by winning 81-67 over Hofstra in a game where three different Huskies all recorded double-doubles.
Three?
A whole three.
Wow. A whole three.
And in the second game of the weekend, Northeastern's men's basketball team traveled down to Philadelphia, where they suffered a hard-fought loss at the hands of Drexel, losing on a game-winning free throw after a foul call that many are calling dubious.
Very dubious indeed, Tom.
Quite dubious.
Moving over to the women now, they lost against Delaware 64-53, and Drexel on Sunday 58-50. Tough loss for the women this weekend, but let's move it on to hockey.
And speaking of hockey, Northeastern's men's hockey team had two games this weekend, both against the Providence Friars. The first game of the weekend took place on Friday night, and it was country night at historic Matthews Arena. The first 500 fans in attendance received a free cowboy hat.
Sounds like a lot of fun, Tom.
It sure was. The game itself was a little bit of a shootout, you might say, with Northeastern rallying from two separate two-goal deficits, including their final goal being scored by Adam Gaudette with only 40 seconds left in regulation time to tie up the game.
What a guy.
And the Huskies were able to salvage an overtime draw against the 10th-ranked Friars. On Saturday night, Northeastern traveled to Providence itself, and they were met with a 2-1 loss in overtime against the Friars.
A shame.
Real shame.
Switching gears now, women's hockey went to Vermont to play the Catamounts. Friday, the Huskies lost 5-2. On Saturday, Northeastern managed to keep it all tied up until the Catamounts' Eve Audrey Picard scored with 11 seconds left, completing a hat trick and giving UVM the win.
That's a tough loss.
Indeed. Now let's bring it over to Courtney for a
fun-filled segment.
There you go.
Thank you, Tom and Mike, and thank you for tuning into this very special episode of Sportseastern. I know we usually focus on the more sports-related news, but today we are gathered here to learn about a very special piece of cooking history, the Beanpot. What is it? It is a small ceramic pot, usually used to cook bean-like dishes. Due to its small shape, it lends itself perfectly to cooking these bean dishes over long periods of time. Oh, what's that? 1 second. Beanpot hockey? Sorry, I've just been informed that we're actually talking about the Beanpot hockey tournament that is coming up here in Boston. So, let's see what that's about. So hockey. It is a tournament played locally here in Boston at TD Garden between Northeastern, Boston University, Boston College, and Harvard. They're hockey teams, and they play for beans? No, it's named after Mr. Beanpot. He was a player for Harvard hockey about 70 years ago who sadly passed away after an angry fan threw a pot of beans at his head after a game. Can you believe it, folks? I can't. After that, the local hockey officials got together and they decided they wanted to do something special for Mr. Beanpot. So they decided to name a tournament after him. It would be played every year, and the local colleges would fight for glory in the name of Mr. Beanpot. May he rest in peace. Let's see. There's got to be something else, right? Women's Beanpot. There's also a women's Beanpot. About 38 years ago, Mary Beanpot, the late Paul Beanpot's sister, decided, why are the women not playing for glory in this Beanpot? So she got together and demanded that the women would be involved with the Beanpot. And ever since then, Northeastern, Harvard, BC, and BU have all had women's teams represented in their own Beanpot tournament. It's great, everybody has fun, Boston comes out, they celebrate Mr. Beanpot himself. Now, back to Tom and Mike about some real Beanpot news. Disclaimer, all this information was from Wikipedia, so blame them.
Thanks for that history lesson, Courtney.
Very accurate.
Very informative as well. Men's hockey, this Friday night, will be hosting UNH for Love Your Melon Night. Women's hockey will be heading to UConn this Friday as well.
And next week, we've got the main event, the granddaddy of them all. Drum roll, please. The Beanpot.
Ho, ho, ho!
Men's hockey is playing at TD Garden Monday night. And their first round draw is... Who is their first round draw, Joe?
Boston College.
Boston College is
Boston
their first round
College.
draw. Northeastern is currently a narrow favorite to beat the harrowed Eagles. They're looking to snap a 30-year Beanpot drought, which included a devastating overtime loss to BU in 2015. And on the women's side, the Beanpot is being held at Conti Forum this year, the home of the aforementioned Eagles. And Northeastern has actually drawn Boston College in the first round, and that is going to be a real tough matchup for our Huskies. BC has already clinched Hockey East's regular season title with a month left in the season. Wow. And they are currently sitting at number 3 in the country. It is going to be quite a slobber knocker between these two teams.
Quite a slobber knocker, Tom.
Quite a slobber knocker.
Well, that's all the time we have for in this episode of Sports Eastern. I've been Mike Passarelli.
And I'm Tom Gambardella.
See you next time.